Aloha, welcome to the Live Ukulele podcast. My name is Brad Bordessa. Thank you for tuning in today. Today I want to talk about the specific pronunciation of a song. You know, I've talked in the past, I've done a kind of a basic breakdown of pronouncing ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi, but a lot of times we get caught up in playing our ukulele and trying to execute the music as well, and sometimes the pronunciation gets neglected and kind of goes out the window. So I want to try and address that today and maybe turn this into a series and approach a number of the more popular Hawaiian songs that folks love to sing with their groups to make sure that you're bringing the best pronunciation that you can to the song itself. Before we get started, big mahalo to all of the supporting members over on liveukulele.com. Your monthly contribution is really a great safety net for keeping things going, keeping the lights on, and just showing your continued and over-the-top support for the content that I create. It's very encouraging to have, you folks in my back pocket and knowing that regardless of what I do, I have that little bit of extra support cruising in from you folks. So really appreciate that. If you want to become a supporting member, you can go to liveukulele.com/support and join up over there, get access to a few exclusive things, a lineup of which I'm trying to figure out how to expand. So if you have any requests of things that you would like to see that might be something that I otherwise wouldn't put out there, shoot me an email, let me know. Always all ears for different ideas that you might have. If the supporting membership isn't your jam, go check out the store, pick up a lesson or an ebook to expand your knowledge of the instrument. It's another great way to support the work here that I do on the Live Ukulele podcast. Also want to send a mahalo out to Uke Logic Strings, Joel, and also Messiah at Worth Strings, who have been keeping me in strings for many, many, many years now. It's really a treat to have that one less thing to have to worry about. If you need top-of-the-line fluorocarbon ukulele strings, Uke Logic or Worth are always my top recommendation. That's what I've been using for many years. I've been using Worth since I was well into my teenage years. And then when Uke Logic came along, I've been using those as well. But I kind of go back and forth. They both have a different characteristic. And if I was willing to change the strings a little bit more often, I would probably pick the set that best works for what I'm playing in the moment and wanting to express. But they're both wonderful and both deserve your attention. Okay, so pronunciation. I was sent an email by Bob, who's one of my supporting members, so mahalo Bob, and he sent me a video that was about the the Department of Naming or Mapping or Documents for the state of Hawaii. They are discussing or discussed or voted on changing Hawaii, the Big Island, changing the name from Hawaii Island to just Hawaii, because Hawaii is the same as Maui or Oahu or Kauai. It's Hawaii. It's just that single name for the island. But in order to keep mostly Malihini from being confused, people say Hawaii Island so that it's more specific. Or if you cannot pronounce Hawaii, lots of people say the Big Island. All right? And as far as this movement goes in the government, this is just for documents. It's not like they were officially saying, like, everybody has to say it this one certain way. I think it's a good change because it's time to move on and recognize Hawaii as its own thing. Like, if you can't keep up, if you can't be ma'a to how this place is referred to, that's a you problem. We shouldn't have to, spell everything out for folks. So I think it's a cool thing. I think that that's the way to move. But it just so happens that the person in this video that I was sent to made this whole video. This person is a real estate agent on Maui, okay? And my understanding is that has made a lot of content since the Lahaina fire talking about Lahaina stuff. Take that as you will. But this person made this whole video on the change from island of Hawaii to Hawaii, and the whole way through he pronounced Hawaii. And also in his video, they're no longer they, it was a he was talking about having lived here for 18 years. And that was problematic for me. That kind of needled me and bothered me in a way that bothered me more than I would have expected. And I've been seeing a lot of Hawaiian content come through because of Lilo and Stitch, people who are excited about the portrayal or, mad about the portrayal, or Hawaiian stuff is kind of trending right now. It should always be forefront, but actually like visible to everybody more so. That's what's happening right now. And with Pohakuloa and Red Hill, it's all going off. So on top of that, there's this guy who, is like pulling the, well, I've lived here for 18 years kind of card, and then not even pronouncing Hawaii right. That bothered me. And so it felt like, I thought about it for a number of days and, colonialism and like, what is the best thing for Hawaii? Like, should all the Haole people move away from Hawaii? And it's like, well, it's so complicated, right? It's so complicated. But I realized that the best thing that you can do to fight that ignorance, and the very least that we can do, is to at least try and pronounce ʻŌlelo Hawaii as best we can as Haole people when we want to use it. So in addition to like a 101, I'm not fluent. I don't ʻŌlelo just off the top of my dome. I haven't put in the time. And, maybe that's a bad on me, and I should work harder to be able to be fluent. But also, I'm not some real estate guy who's been here for 18 years and can't even say like the place that he lives correctly. So, neither here nor there. But I thought that a great way that we could help move forwards and be positive in the light of all of these things that are, otherwise can be a little bit dark and a little bit of a downer, is to talk about how to specifically pronounce our way through specific songs. And like I said in the intro, I think this might become a regular series because it's very important, but also it's straightforward and hopefully helpful because there are a lot of songs out there that are played enthusiastically and beloved by folks who play them, and it's like, oh my gosh, like Kōkeʻe or Wahine Ilikea or whatever your song is, you have that connection to the song, and then they sing the song and it's like pronounced all wrong. And it would be that much more beautiful and that much more of kind of like, to pay respect to that music that you're playing and to make it that much better to pronounce it right as well as playing it. And I thought that because it seems like the number one modern hit that comes around on the Kani Pila playlist of folks who are enthusiastic about Hawaii, they play ukulele, they go to the jams, and they're stoked to sing Hawaiian songs, they always play Kōkeʻe by Uncle Dennis Kamakahi. That's the jam. And there's things in every single song that are going to trip you up because of how the sounds move together. Like, you can go back and listen to my podcast. I encourage you to go back and listen to my podcast on basic Hawaiian pronunciation, or some podcast or video on basic Hawaiian pronunciation. There's lots of resources, but I do believe that it is upon us as the Malihini in these lands to educate ourselves, to at least know the basics of this stuff. So I'm not going to rehash that there. Go back and listen to that. But just because you understand what it should be doesn't mean that it's easy to actually say the words when it comes into context in a song. So that's why I think that this will be helpful and immediately useful in improving generally Hawaiian pronunciation. Okay? So, Kōkeʻe is a beautiful place on the island of Kauai, up on the top of the mountain. I went there once, and it's where you have the great overlook into Kalalau Valley. Killer spot. But right off the top, for Kōkeʻe, the way that the word is said is you have the two things that are most misused in the Hawaiian language, and that is the kahako and the okina. And so the kahako, whenever the kahako is over one of the vowels in Hawaiian language, you extend the vowel. And it changes where the accent is inside the word. So in this case, we have Kōkeʻe. And, this is exaggerated a little bit. You're not going to necessarily hear it said this way day to day. And also when you sing things, because sometimes the rhythm of the music changes the accent and how long you sing things, you're not always going to sing it exactly as it's written. Sometimes you have to fudge a little bit. But a lot of times knowing the pronunciation and knowing where the emphasis or the accent of a word is will help you phrase it better so that you can phrase the actual meaning of the word and not turn it into sounding like something else, which you can do if you're not paying attention. And that's why these specific song examples will be interesting, and we can hopefully avoid some of those things. And then at the end of the word, you have ke'e. And so for ke'e, you have ke, e, English e, okina e. And that okina is the breath stop. So you say ke'e, ke'e. And you stop the breath and you kind of spit out the second e, the second a sound. So ke'e. And if your mouth doesn't want to do the okina, it's great to go through the Hakalama chart. You can find those. I'll try and remember to put that in the podcast description. A nice chart for you to go through and do the okina ones. Instead of the ha-ka-la, you do ha'a, ka'a, la'a, and you practice the okina in all the different combinations with those lead-in vowels, right? And then you would do he'e, ke'e, le'e, hi'i, ki'i, li'i, right? You practice your way all the way through that so that your tongue gets used to making those sounds. But the title of the song, Kōkeʻe. All right. And this is a hui-style song. So there's a chorus in between, nestled in 3 verses. All right. So we'll start with the first verse. Upuaʻe, he mana'o, ika vekiu o Kōkeʻe, ika nani o ka aina, o ka noe po ai ai. All right. So not super duper complicated as far as Hawaiian songs go, but it's also not a walk in the park. It's not e huli mako or anything. So upuaʻe. That's 2 words. You have upu, and then you have a'e. But between them, there's no okina. So you run them together. So it's upuaʻe. So you only get the okina in Hawaiian where it's actually explicitly written. Or in the case of the old days or, being lazy, typing an email, you might not actually use the okina and your knowledge of the language and of the meaning of what you're actually talking about, that might be all you have to go on. And you have to assume that that's the meaning and that there's actually an okina there. Super interesting to read the old Hawaiian newspapers because there's no kako, there's no okina. They didn't have access to, I guess, the dyes that would have had those symbols. So they just didn't put them in because everybody spoke Hawaiian back then and everybody could figure out what the meaning was just fine without needing to explicitly spell it out. Though a lot of times these days, everything is explicitly spelled out so that folks who are learning the language, coming at it as a second language, they're able to kind of deduce the meaning and understand the correct pronunciation, right? And it's very helpful. Like in this case, I'm looking at Hemele Aloha, which has been fairly thoroughly reviewed for correctness in the ʻŌlelo, and it has all the diacritical marks. So it's easier to get a sense of exactly how it's going to go together. You don't have to do any kind of detective work to find out how to pronounce things. It's very laid out and straightforward. So that's what I'm referring to here. If you are interested in pronouncing Hawaiian songs correctly, which you should be, This is a wonderful book to have because I have yet to run across any kind of ʻŌlelo errors. Like there's variations across Hawaiian songs, of course, just from, how things are perpetuated as people cover songs and like, oh yeah, I heard my great-great-grandfather play this song at the Kani Pila 20 years ago, and this is how I remember it. Things end up changing over time a little bit. So, that's one thing. But as far as like errors, I have never run across an error in the ʻŌlelo in this book. So wonderful resource. He mele aloha. Put it on your shelf. Okay, so upua e. And then in the music, there's a break. And in what's written here, there's a comma. He mana'o. He mana'o. And mana'o is like thought. So it's mana with an okina o at the end. Mana'o. Mana'o. Right? And so just you say these things until you can say them without struggling is basically, how I will do it is you just run the lines and you say the lines. It's helpful to say the lines a lot of times before you try and sing them. Because when you sing them, everything kind of changes. But if you can pronounce it and practice pronouncing it, you're going to have an easier time making sure that when you sing, you're aiming for that correct pronunciation as opposed to going the other way around. It gets kind of confusing. So, upua e he mana'o. I ka vekiu o Kōkeʻe. So, I ka vekiu has a kahako on the A sound. Vekiu. I ka vekiu o Kōkeʻe. And then we're back to the title. And vekiu it's one of those situations where the kahako doesn't necessarily, because it sings ika vekiu, you're still extending that last u sound at the end of the word. Ika vekiu. So there could be a kahako on the last u sound as well. Typically, you won't have the kahako on the second to last syllable, I believe is how that works. Is usually how it goes. And so you would only have the kahako on a vowel that's earlier in the word or right at the very end. But in this case, the kahako is on the ve. Ika vekiu. But you also sing the oolong. So it's one of those situations where you're not going to change exactly how you sing the word because this is how Uncle Dennis sang it. So as the composer, as somebody who ʻŌlelo'd, he thought about all this stuff and thought that singing it in this way wasn't going to change the meaning enough that anybody would get confused of what it was actually meaning. Ika vekiu o Kōkeʻe. And this is for the o, there's no okina. Ika vekiu o Kōkeʻe. There's an okina there because a lot of times you'll take a breath in that spot. And so you will break your breath to take a breath, but you're not saying o Kōkeʻe. There's not an oomph to it that often comes with the okina. O Kōkeʻe, you kind of roll into the o sound. O Kōkeʻe. Little distinctions are going to be what make or break your pronunciation when you're working through a song. And the O's and the E's and all of the little Ami letters that connect words, or the Ami words, they're words, but they come across as single letters in your lyric sheet. O, E, they're going to be tricky places where you have to be mindful of when you glide between vowels and when you stop because there's an okina that's explicitly in that spot. In this case, there's not one, so you would run it together if you were pronouncing it. Ika vekiu o Kōkeʻe. Vekiu o, right? You move into the o sound. Vekiu o. But because how you sing it, ika vekiu, breath, o Kōkeʻe. There's a built-in okina there, but you don't necessarily want to sing ika vekiu o Kōkeʻe. It's not like a hard start of the o like there was the okina there. Okay, and then we have third line, ika nani. This one's pretty straightforward, but I always think of Brother Max Angel saying, keep your nanis tight. And when you pronounce Hawaiian, your mouth isn't supposed to move a whole lot. It does at the beginning because you have to actually make the sound. You have to fight to make the sound because it's not like English. It's not like what you're used to speaking. But when you speak, you don't want to, especially for vowel sound, you don't want to super open your mouth. So it's not like I kanani. Like that's where the funny accent comes from. And it's like, oh, malihini. You can like spot the people who sing like that, and it sounds funny because they're singing it like it's English, but it should be kept a little bit smaller. So you keep your mouth closed. I kanani. Right? You're just kind of holding your mouth enough so that you see your teeth just a little bit. I kanani, nani. Right? So you keep your nanis tight. Thanks, Max. O ka'aina is the end of the third line. O ka'aina. And in this case, o, once again, no okina. So you'd run that together. I kanani o, as opposed to I kanani o, right? No okina. I kanani o ka'aina. And aina has the okina, and it has a kahako on the beginning a sound. Aina, right? Not a lot of people pronounce it super hard like that. It's one of those words it's unique enough that you don't have to be super, super duper cautious on that. But what you do need to be cautious for is saying aina. You don't want to have an ae sound, aina. You want it to be ai, aina. The aina is the land. This place here in Hawaii. O ka'aina, of the land. And make it so that when you say it, aina, right? This is one of the great mispronounced words in Hawaiian songs, is aina. So make sure you get the okina, not ka'aina, ka'aina, and get the e sound in there, ka'aina, right? And it helps to just break the words down and go really slow. Aina. So you can really feel how your mouth moves and get used to those sounds. Last line of the first verse. O kanoe po ai. All right. And for that one, it's pretty straightforward because you have consonants starting most of the words in that line. O kanoe po ai. So you get free stops in there. You don't have to worry about your okinas too much. But po ai is tricky because you're going to, well, first of all, you have po has the kahako, so po, and then ai with the okina, and then another ai with the okina. And so for both of those, you put it all together, po ai. So you make sure you get the okina, but you also get the e sound at the end of ai. Po ai. All right? And it should be said that this is my understanding of Hawaiian and my haole dialect of Hawaiian. If you listen to people like Malu States, he does the Ka'alala podcast and teaches kind of from that branding, Ka'alala, which is the Hawaiian Raven. He's a ʻŌlelo as a second language speaker, but he has really spent a lot of time listening to traditional speakers, old recordings of kupuna who spoke like old Hawaiian before it was banned Hawaiian. And he has really tried to make his dialect and his approach to Hawaiian have that old feel to it. So like you listen to Hawaiian, you roll up in Honolulu airport and you hear whatever they're talking about in Hawaiian over the loudspeaker. That is a very modern, generic style of Hawaiian speaking. If you listen back to old speakers, that's not how they sound. So we do have to keep in mind that this is just the best of our understanding at this point, because we don't, in the modern era, have a whole lot of old speakers to listen to, which is why Malu talks about, if you want to learn to ʻŌlelo, spend most of your time going back and listening to those old recordings of how the kupuna spoke, because that's the real Hawaiian. That's where a lot of the how they spoke, that's what you should be trying to copy. And of course, there's a few people who were blessed to learn Hawaiian from those folks. So they have the dialect, like Keaone Smith. It comes to mind. He's a buddy of Malu's as well. But, keep in mind that the ʻŌlelo that I'm pronouncing here is very clean in a simplified sense so that we as foreigners can kind of communicate it. But it's not necessarily how it's supposed to sound like Hawaiian as a traditional language. Just food for thought. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to pronounce it as best we can in this newer style, but just there is a difference. Okay, and now we get to the hui. This is the part everybody loves because you hear it a number of times in the song. Everybody remembers it because there's an English line in there, right? Uncle Dennis kind of saves us one line of Hawaiian, and it just kind of ties it all together. It makes everybody feel good. Like, oh, I understand that one at least. O kalalau he aina la'a. All right. And so for this one, o kalalau, the O in this case has the okina, but not really super pertinent here because we're coming in at the beginning of a line. We're going to have taken a breath before this line. But you can still, if you want, you can punch the O a little bit. O kalalau. And when you say kalalau, make sure it's not kalalau. Lao, right? Lao. If you have the A-O sound, it's kalalau. Kalalau. But what you want is kalalau with the U sound at the end. Kalalau. He aina, once again, aina, la'a. And la'a has the okina in the middle. La'a. If you practice your ha'aka'ala'a, there's one of the words in there. If you practice that, you'll start to recognize. There's a lot of words just in that simple exercise that you'll use here and there, everywhere. There's a whole bunch of them. La'a, ka'a, he'e, they all come back. Li'i, we're going to get to a li'i right here. Next line, ikaua li'i. In the fine rainy mist, the small rain. Ikaua li'i. All right? So for this one, the biggest pitfall is going to be kaua. You're going to be tempted to put no okina in there. Ikaua li'i. Ikaua. No okina. Kaua. So you run the A sound into the U sound. Kaua. Kaua li'i. Ikaua li'i. And then we have o waimea. Once again, okina o. So you can punch it a little bit. O waimea. And then ku'ulei aloha. Ku'u is usually not a super big problem for folks, but once again, you have the okina, ku'u. Make sure you get the stop in there. And then lei aloha. Lei aloha is going to be another common spot where you add the okina where it's not supposed to be. So it's not ku'ulei aloha. Ku'ulei aloha. Lei aloha. Right? You just keep the word going and you run it into the next one. Don't turn off your mouth until you get to the end of aloha. Ku'ulei aloha. O waimea ku'ulei aloha. Never more to say goodbye. Everybody's got that one. Okay. So, verse 2. We have e ho'i mai ana I kahikina. E ho'i has the okina, ho'i, return. Mai, and this is probably another top 5 most mispronounced Hawaiian song words is mai. Everybody tries to say mai. So the difference is you have mai with an E sound at the end, and the wrong one is mai. And mai is to wilt as a flower. So you don't want to usually be singing that in a song because that's not really what we're going for here. The translation of the words is returning to the east. E ho'i mai ana I kahikina, from the east. Or to the east. So in this situation here, the mai is just directional and it brings kind of the imagery towards the speaker. And mai is a very common word, so you want to learn to get the E in there so that you can be pronouncing it properly. E ho'i mai ana. And mai ana runs together as well as I kahikina. E ho'i mai ana I kahikina. Right? And you won't get that if you're just singing the song because there's going to be a breath in there. E ho'i mai ana, breath. I kahikina. That's why if you pronounce it, you kind of get a little bit extra mileage for your efforts. And you get a sense of how that whole line would go together if you were pronouncing it by itself. Ikala. All right? And la in this case has a kahako because we're talking about the sun, in the sun. Ikala. This kahako is a gimme because you're singing that vowel super long. Ikala. vela, vela, right? You're hanging on that automatically because it's already there. So in this situation, this is, kind of an unnecessary kahako within the context of the song. But if you were to say it, it's not ikala vela vela, ikala vela vela. You hold that ah sound, ikala vela vela, right? And then vela vela is just hot, a double of like vela kala. Wow, the day is hot. Vela vela, just like extra meaning to that. Maybe it's extra hot. But in this case, vela vela, you're gonna have the little bit more V sound on the W's. It's written as a W, but pronouncing it with a little bit more of a V sound. Ike kai and kai, just like mai, has an E sound at the end. It's not kai, which would be kae, K-A-E. You want K-A-I. Kai. Kai. Ike kai, havana vana. All right, once again, you have the V sound, and that's pretty typical. But the Hawaiian W is kind of weird because it depends on who's speaking. It depends on where they're from, who they learned from. You go back to Brother Real Estate Man on YouTube saying Hawaii, in that sense, you have Hawaii. It's like extra English W sound. But then you also have the people on like Hawaii News Now who are like Hawaii. And it's like a very hard V. And what I've heard is like it's somewhere in between. It's like kind of you soften the V sound. So it's like Hawaii. So it's not quite wa and not quite va. Hawaii. Somewhere in the middle. Tricky. But once again, Malu States has a great video on pronouncing that. And, he's actually Hawaiian. So, I trust that. Don't trust me so much. Do your own homework. Check out what you can. And, look into these things and try and find out as much mana'o as you can so that you're well informed and you understand. It brings the depth to it. It's not just that you are, why do people pronounce it that way? How did they pronounce it back in the old days? How do they pronounce it now? What is a recommended course for these days to pronounce a given word? All right. So like havana vana. In this case, most people are going to say it and sing it with the harder V sound, but ha has the kahako. So it's going to be havana vana if you're just saying it. Ike kai, havana vana. Okay, here's probably one of the weirdest lines in the song. Ipo ipu ma koloa. Ipo ipu ma koloa. Right? And this is one that people get away with because it's right at the end of the line and it's kind of swinging and you're thinking about the chorus already and it's a quick line and then boom, you're out and you don't have to think about it anymore. But you have two place names in there. You have po'ipu, and koloa, right? And the way that they sing is gonna change. You're not gonna sing it exactly like you pronounce it, but try and pronounce it as best you can to get started. Ipo'ipu ma koloa, right? And the way that it sings, like I'm arguably saying koloa is incorrect. Like koloa kind of implies that the kahako is at the end of the word, whereas the way that it's written with the ko being the kahako, kolo, like vaikoloa. It's not vaikoloa, vaikoloa. So ipo'ipu ma koloa. But the way that the song is sung, ipo'ipu, that one's fine. Ma koloa. So you're used to hearing the ah at the end held, but that's not actually where the kahako is in the place name. Okay, so that's the end of verse 2. We're cooking along. This is kind of going to be a little bit longer podcast because we're really diving in. If you're still with me, right on. Good for you. Hopefully you're deepening your understanding of this song. Third verse, meleau, no ka beauty. All right. People, Uncle Dennis, especially Queen Liliuokalani, would drop English words in certain places to be poetic. No ka beauty, like you could say no ka nani, but no ka beauty. It's just like It's a different kind of a decoration, and it happens in Hawaiian songs. Meleau no ka beauty. So for this one, the biggest issue is going to be au, meleau. And it's au as in I. Au is I. Vau, au. I am doing something. Meleau no ka beauty. Right? I am singing or making music for the beauty. So meleau no okina. Meleau no ka beauty. Second line, ikauka iu iu. Ikauka, there's no okina there, so kauka, 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 ikauka. And then you have okina, iu, iu, double okina, iu. So the iu, 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 iu. And that one's funny because when you're going through the song, it sings a little bit quick. And just the way that it works, that one's going to be pretty foreign to most English speakers. Ikauka, iu, 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 iu. Third line, Kōkeʻe ua ikeau. All right. Kōkeʻe, once again, title, place of the song. Ua ikeau. Ua ike, with the okina on ike. Ike is like to see or to know, knowledge. It could go both ways. It's one of those situational things. In this case, it looks like we are seeing something. Ua ikeau. So I have seen was past tense. In Kōkeʻe, I have seen. I Kōkeʻe ua ikeau. And once again, you have no okina for au, and you're ending on the u sound. Au. Ua ikeau. And final line, ikanoe po ai ai. And this is almost exactly the same as the last line of the first verse, o kanoe po ai ai. But in this case, we have I kanoe po ai ai. Right? So you might think o kanoe could be like of the swirling mists, and I kanoe might be like in the swirling mists. Subtle difference. From a song standpoint, it could probably go each way, but Uncle decided that he wanted to change it up, so it was a little bit different for that last line. I kanoe po ai ai. And so same thing there, po, and then you have ai ai. Don't make it I. Po ai ai. Po ai ai. I kanoe po ai ai. Right? And that's one of those situations where if you're singing in a group, the majority of the group is going to be singing I kanoe po ai ai. And what gets held out is that A sound. And so the whole group might be doing that, and you might be hanging on the E. You just kind of have to know for yourself that is where you're at, that is the correct pronunciation. So just hold your line, stick to it, and definitely try and find yourself a copy of Hemele Aloha so you can follow along and look and just practice pronouncing. Even if you maybe don't know a song, open to a random page and practice saying the words in that specific order, because you're going to run into different things that you otherwise wouldn't know. Like, even if you ʻŌlelo and you're used to saying like practice sentences or something, there's a certain amount of repetition and like generic practice sentences that you're going to say that just kind of fit within the bounds of learning ʻŌlelo. It just like, that's kind of what works for it. But there's so many different variations once you start to get into like real world usage. Like for a while, I was reading through Keone Smith's translation of Harry Potter. Not because I necessarily understood everything. There's a lot of like really advanced sentence patterns that he used to portray the story, but just to pronounce it and like to make my tongue make those sounds. And I'm sure that while I was doing that, my ʻŌlelo sounded a lot better than it does now, because you just have that practice and your mouth is used to making those motions. So read through songs and try and verify your song sheets as much as possible. Like, you know, you shouldn't be getting Hawaiian song lyrics off of Metro Lyrics or whatever comes up on Google, probably. Huapala tends to be pretty good. I know that whoever runs that does a really nice job trying to curate and get things as correct as possible. Some things are kind of janky sometimes, but for the most part, it's a good jumping off point. But yeah, just really try and do your best to honor the language and to bring that aspect of the beauty of Hawaiian music to your portrayal. And so one last thought, and this is just a personal sharing from me, is that I was very fortunate to come up learning Hawaiian music from the kahumokus and being a part of the Kahumoku Ohana Music and Lifestyle Workshop. And I had a pass, right? I got in with amazing musicians, amazing Hawaiian musicians, and was really embraced into that scene. And I'm, very, very fortunate to have that. But also there was still a lot of earning it that I felt that I had to do in order to really belong. Even if wow, this kid can shred on the ukulele. So what if you can't pronounce the words right? If you can't, as you're singing the song playing at Kani Pila, if you can't ʻŌlelo and make the meaning of the song clear, so what that you can jam ukulele? If you're going to play Hawaiian music, that's part of the kuleana, is doing your best to bring that correct pronunciation to the music. So I always really worked hard towards that, and in the Institute of Hawaiian Music, we were fortunate to be it was part of the course load, so forced, but very willingly forced, happily forced, to take ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi classes. And we did 3 classes in our time there on Maui, and that greatly increased my ability to ʻŌlelo and understand and to pronounce lyrics better. And I feel like that was such well-invested time to have that comfort and the confidence to go out there and know that when I'm singing a song, this is as good as I'm going to get it. This is my full effort coming forwards. And I've had compliments from folks who say wow, your puana, your pronunciation is very good, because people are used to hearing other people sing stuff wrong. So I think that if you're passionate about Hawaiian music, the best thing that you can do is really make the effort to understand and pronounce as best you can and sing as best you can, so that you're bringing the true meaning of the words through. And so I think that this is kind of cool. Please shoot me an email if you were super bored, but if you made it to the end, you couldn't have been that bored. But I think this is something to visit occasionally on the podcast, is to go through some different songs and talk about the pronunciation. And we didn't even really get into the meaning of the song. I don't feel like I'm super qualified for that. I can have a rudimentary understanding of what folks are singing about, but to really get the poetry, that's a whole nother level and a whole different style. You learn conversational Hawaiian in all of the classes that you'll take for the most part, but written Hawaiian song ʻŌlelo is quite different. And so understanding that is a whole different layer. But the first step is to try and pronounce it as best you can. And yeah, take an ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi class and try and get your foreign tongue and your foreign mind around those words as best as possible. And not necessarily because it's yours to use. That's another weird thing about ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi is well, I'm not Hawaiian. Should I be speaking ʻŌlelo? If you're going to live here, you should at least be able to pronounce the street names. I feel very strongly about that. And, some folks that I love very much and I'm very close to make me pull my hair out because they say things like Ali'i Drive. We're going down to Ali'i Drive. It's no, it's not Ali'i Drive. It's Ali'i Drive. You got to take an ʻŌlelo Hawaiʻi class. Hello. But, I say this out as much as possible out of love and, wanting to uplift people and empower folks to try and do the right thing to really take care of Hawaii and at least give back in that way so that, Hawaiian people do, if they were to see you play, that they feel honored that you took the time to really try and pronounce the songs correctly and to bring that meaning across. All right, that's it from me here at the Live Ukulele podcast. By the time you hear this, I will be halfway through Uncle George's workshop on Maui. Should be a fun time. We're trying something new. I got the clearance from the admin and the powers that be to try out a mini Kaliko Pila. If you've been to Uncle George's workshop before, you know that the Kaliko Pila circle is really big there. And there's like 100 people and they all sit around and they're all spread out. And there's a center PA speaker that all the instructors plug into. And so it's like kind of like a circle concert, but also like if you want to lead a song, there's a wireless microphone that they'll bring to you and a wireless instrument plug-in bug that they'll bring to you. But I kind of feel like that's a little bit of a lot for folks who maybe aren't familiar with Kaliko Pila. And I learned so much from sitting in acoustic Kaliko Pila and having to learn to listen and like learn to play off of people. And if I can't hear the guy next to me, it's because I'm playing too loud or the person in between us is playing too loud. We need to be more mindful of our musical skills as we interact. So I'm going to lead a couple of small size limited acoustic Kaliko Pila just so folks have an opportunity to try that and experience that. And, you know, maybe if folks want to try to take a pa'ani, it's not like super high stakes pressure of a big group and a PA system in a very different environment. My experience is that it's a very good playground to learn the songs and to learn to interact as musicians and to learn to, you know, play responsibly and to play boldly. And it's really hard to make the jump from being a student and just taking lessons to being like a full-on performer in a spotlight with a wireless microphone and a plug-in. So I'm excited about that. I think that'll be a cool opportunity for folks, and we'll see what the interest level is. I might be completely off base and nobody shows up and nobody's into it, but I kind of suspect that that won't be the case and that there will be plenty of people who dig it and wish there was more of it. So we'll have to twist some arms and see if we can keep it going all week. So I hope you're well wherever you're at listening in the world. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, my name is Brad Bordessa. The Live Ukulele podcast is published on the first and third Saturdays of the month. Most of the time, I missed the last one because it just wasn't happening and it wasn't right. And the interview that I had lined up, I had my mouse cursor ready to click the button to publish it. I was like, I need to wait and double check something. So yeah, every first and third Saturdays, 99% of the time. I mean, I can pretty much say that because we're over 100 episodes now. So at least 99% of the time. All right, if you want to support the work that I do here, check out liveukulele.com/store. Pick up some lessons, some ebooks, or you can become a supporting member. That is greatly appreciated, and I look forward to corresponding with you down the road. Shoot me an email, brad@liveukulele.com, if you have any comments, questions, thoughts, whatever. And yeah, thanks for being here, and use your music to shine the light. Ahui ho.